The exercise that the European Parliament has made is an exercise based on 3 reports. First of all, the report of Mr. Brok and Mrs. Bressot and Jo Leinen. That is the report on what are the possible evolutions inside the actual Lisbon Treaty. There is a second report, my report, about what is needed outside the existing treaties. And the third report is a report by Mrs. Beres and Mr. Böge about the necessary reforms inside the governance of the euro, establishing a fiscal capacity for the eurozone. So what we have done is not one report, but coherent 3 reports, and you have to, in fact, read the 3 reports together to have an overview of what the Parliament is proposing. And why we are proposing it is also very, very easy to understand. We are living in difficult times in Europe. We are faced with what we call a polycrisis, a multiple crisis around refugees, around migrants, around the fallout of the financial crisis, which is still not solved, our weaknesses in our neighborhood. So what we try to do in these 3 reports is to answer the question what reforms Europe needs to be capable to face the challenges better than in the future. Because the general feeling of most people inside and outside Europe is always the same. That is that Europe acts too little, too late towards these crises. I give always as an example the way, for example, the US has reacted to the financial crisis and the way we have reacted to the financial crisis. They have reacted to the financial crisis immediately by launching TARP, that it was the recapitalization of their banks, $400 billion, immediately followed by an enormous investment program of more than $900 billion, covering 10 years, and then a quantitative easing program by the Federal Reserve of 1.2 trillion. And all this was launched, this 3-stage rocket against the financial crisis, in 9 months. With Democrats and Republicans. It started with a Republican administration, and it was Obama who continued that effort under a Democratic administration. And then you have to compare it with Europe. It's the same financial crisis coming from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And we still are in the middle of cleaning up our banks. And we have still not fully the banking union we need. We are still discussing an investment program that is 1/3 of the investment program of the US. And we did quantitative easing, that's true, but far later, in a defensive way, to avoid deflation, instead of, in fact, encouraging our economy. So the question that we have put ourselves in the Parliament is, how this is possible? How it is possible that they can react immediately and that we have so difficult? And we think that it is because our institutional framework is not fit for purpose, is not fit for the future, and needs a number of reforms the fastest as possible. And what the 3 reports are trying to do is to examine what needs to be done inside the treaty, what needs to be done outside, and what needs to be done especially in the Eurozone, what new governance we especially need. We need, we say, more than only a growth and stability pact, only a few rules. You need also treasury, you need also fiscal capacity, you need also a minister of finance for the Eurozone to deal with these problems, including a convergence court like we call it. We examine also in this report what institutional changes in the decision-making process here in Europe is needed. Maybe a smaller European Commission that becomes a real European government, not longer representing 28, because there are 28 countries. Tomorrow 27, and maybe after tomorrow again 28, as we all know. We need a system with 2 controlling bodies. One, the European Parliament, representing the citizens. The other one, the sort of Council of States, representing the member states of the Union, as it is the case in a good working public organization. And we need also to have a budget that is more based on what we call own resources, and there the work has been prepared by the so-called Monti Group, who have published now, in the name of the three institutions, also the Council, a report that is indicating what type of new funding we could use on the European level to be capable in the future. And on top of that, what the reports try to do is to open also a number of new fields where we think Europe needs to be present. For example, a defense union. For example, also a migration and a policy that is based on a real capacity on the European level. For example, European Border and Coast Guard. Also, in the fight for internal security, the necessity to create in the future a European investigation and intelligence capacity on the European level, because we see today, and we have seen in the past, that coordination between national authorities is not sufficient enough. There are always loopholes. Or saying it in another way, terrorists don't know any borders. It are our police forces and intelligence services who still know borders. And that is in any way not an advantage. So what we try to do is all this to put it on the table. And then we end our report with a recommendation to the three institutions involved and also to your institution. That is to start what we call an interinstitutional reflection on all this in parallel with the Brexit. We have the Brexit that will be in any way not an easy, defensive debate, somebody going out of the Union. We think that at the same time, you need also to have an offensive operation and exercise reflecting on the future of the European Union, and we propose, based on the same format as the Monti Group on own resources, to have an interinstitutional reflection starting with representatives of the three main institutions, Commission, Council and the Parliament, in which naturally also your institution, the region, should be involved.